my gold mine, and I have another very special guest here today.
Hello, everyone.
There he is. I imported some cheap Canadian labor for us today. Well, Dan, are you ready to go to work?
No, I'm just a tourist.
He's a tourist.
I'm a tourist.
He's a, sightseer.
I'm ready to watch you work.
Yeah, you come watch us work, film us. My plan is we're going to go up to the stope today. We're going to find some real nice high-grade gold for you.
Awesome.
Yeah. And we got Harry from Mine Operator.
Howdy.
Harry's excited to get back to work. He's been up here the last couple days in the rain and the cold. Been surviving?
Oh yeah.
Any snow yet?
I've been eating well. Just in the mountain peaks above 5,000 feet. Not down here yet.
Hey Harry, that's a nice shirt you're wearing.
Oh, you like that, huh?
Dan is like a kid in a candy store in here. He's loving it.
Of course. Boy, short.
Yeah, try carrying bags through here.
No kidding.
All right, Harry from Mine Operator helping us out again.
Yes, sir.
I'm hoping we can find some good gold today.
You chip it all out by hand before?
Yeah. Yeah, I made Brent do the hard work.
Perfect.
Wow, you're fast. How'd you get up here so fast? It's like you've done this before.
Bonk.
Oh, there we go.
That's what the brain bucket's for.
There's a few of those up here.
Okay, now we are in the transferway. Harry's over there doing a little scaling.
I'm out of shape already.
Dan is up in the honey hole here.
In the honey hole.
In
You
order
say
to-
there's high-grade stuff here.
There's some good stuff here. Yeah, I'll show you where it is.
Excellent.
Sitting on a muck pile. You might be sitting on $20,000 worth of gold right now, Dan.
That's the way I like it.
I'll just stay here for a little while.
I'll claim this for myself.
Yeah. We have Dan all set up at the face here. We got him started with a hammer and chisel.
Not that I'm working. No.
No.
I'm not doing that.
No,
This is playing. This isn't working.
that's right. We're playing in the gold mine. But we'll get him started with the old manual job here, and then we'll move on to the hammer drill.
Oh. Air quality's still good.
Good.
Okay. Where are we? Oh, yeah, juicy. Okay, that's enough work.
Yeah, you're good. I'm tired. See any gold in there?
Gold, gold, gold. Lots of sulfides, no gold.
Okay.
But my eyes are so bad.
Yeah.
Even if it was staring at me, I wouldn't be able to see it.
Hard.
Hard. Hard, hard, hard.
Dan is in some really, really good stuff.
Don't take it all.
Mine! All mine!
A lot of VG in there. That piece he's working on, we think, has a piece of visible gold on it.
Oh, what did we get? 3 bags full?
Yeah, 2.5, 3 bags somewhere in there.
Of the good stuff?
Yep. So we'll take that down and crush it. Now I think it's time for lunch.
Sounds good.
Dan has successfully moved his bags from over there to here, where the cart is.
We're almost there, right?
Yeah, we're almost there. The first 10 feet's the hardest. So now we'll watch Dan get his bags from here out to the truck.
Where's my bags? I got a cart to push. Ha ha ha!
There we go. Oh boy.
I'm not very good with not hitting my head.
You're too tall to be in here.
Well, all 3 of us are pretty tall.
Yeah, that's true. Okay, now we got to get those bags down the chute. Right there.
Right there.
Right there. All right, just launch them right through. There's this little slit in the orange thing there. Bingo. Here's our bags from the stope. This is the stuff that Dan mined out for us. We have 125 pounds roughly. We are going to run it through the jaw crusher, the hammer mill, and the shaker table. And we're gonna see how much gold we're gonna get. Harry, how much gold do you think we're gonna get?
I have no idea.
No idea, not even gonna play the game. Dan?
20 grams.
20 grams. I'm gonna say 8.5. I'm gonna shoot for 8.5. Conservative. All right, let's do it. Here we go, first bag.
For a second so we get a good shot of this gold coming out.
Look at all the gold.
Crossing cameras.
Yeah. All the way up there. It just works its way right out of those top 3 grooves. Right down this long groove up onto the cleaning plane. It makes a band all the way down to the number 1. We took 125 pounds down to about 100 grams. And that's where almost all of our gold is. There might be a little bit in the number 2. I will pan that out and we can take a look at that. But first let's pan the number 1s and see what we got. Here's a quick look at what we panned out from our number 1. That's a lot of gold. Let's see if I can not pour it in my lap. Here's our concentrates. I've mixed up about 125 grams of cons, about 200 grams of soda ash, about 200 grams of anhydrous borax, and about 30 grams of silica. I'm gonna mix it all together. I am not gonna add any collector metal this time.
I think you're awfully brave to do that. Without a collector metal, it's possible for the gold to stay in the flux and not fall out, or at least some of it. You're brave.
We're gonna find out. Here are the cons in the furnace, melting down. So this is quite interesting. This is the number 2 that I've panned all the way down. And this is the gold that was in the number 2. And don't get me wrong, there's still gold there. But it may be just a couple of % of what went into the number 1. And so we took 125 pounds, concentrated it down into 125 grams, and got 97% of the gold in the number 1 and 2-3% in the number 2. So the table is very, very efficient at concentrating the gold in the number 1. Come on. It's got a pretty good effect though.
It does. The surface of the sun effect.
What?
Everybody likes that. Yeah, that's a pretty nice pattern.
loud.
Here we go.
Nice.
Here's our metal. We did have a little layer of matte on top. So what I'm going to do next time is add a little bit of potassium nitrate as an oxidizer, and we'll oxidize that away and left with just metal. But let's weigh it before we put it in our cupel. 17.7 grams. So my hope is half that's gold. I'm going to put it right in there. It will melt very quickly. We should be able to see it start melting pretty soon. All the base metals will oxidize and go into the cupel, and we'll be left with our precious metal bead.
Alrighty, I think we've got it. That's bright in there.
It's hot. Now it's still molten, so if we do it right, we should be able to see it cool.
Boom.
Did it solidify?
Yep, just blink.
Oh, I didn't get zoomed in on time.
I missed it too. Maybe not.
None of us
No,
got
I
it.
think it's still, is it still molten?
No, I blinked.
Yeah.
It's unmistakable.
Guesses on weight? I'm saying 4 right
four.
now.
I'm saying 5. Wishful thinking. Hey, light's nice.
It's looking good. Yeah, it's dark in here. The camera decided it needed light. That is amazing looking. Bright gold.
Let's see what it weighs. Ah, you were right.
4.29.
Still not bad.
4 gram button in 125 pounds of cons, of rock,
Of rock?
of ore. Someone do the math real quick. Well, there we go. That comes out to 70 grams per ton, which is just over 2 ounces per ton. Nothing wrong with that, Jason. Nothing wrong at all.
We did well. Thanks for doing all the work.
Hey, no problem. It was fun. Work, no. Play.
No, play, the play.
Playing.
Thanks for coming on vacation with
Yes,
me and finding some
exactly.
gold by
Playing in the
accident.
mine.
Yeah. We're back at the gold mine again. As you can see, it's a beautiful late summer day here in the North Cascades. Snow and freezing temperatures make everything harder. But I still got a lot of stuff I want to do. I've got the rail in now. I've got the stope set up. We've drilled, we've blasted, we've mucked some. We've got our first couple tons of ore down the hill. I want to do another couple blasts, and I want to see how much ore I can get out. So let's get back into the mine before we get snowed out of here. Well, Chad's over here just a mucking machine. That cone system works really well, huh, Chad?
Yeah, way easier than we were doing it before.
Yeah, it works so good. We've mucked our way back pretty much to the working face where our high-grade stuff is. I think it's about 2 o'clock now. We've got the rest of this pile Chad's working on, and it tapers down to here. We might be able to get this mucked. And what do you think, Chad? If we put an hour on it, you think it's 4 hours, 6 hours more mucking?
Yeah,
Yeah.
probably a good 4-hour shift, and we'll get this done.
And there's,
You know what? I would estimate maybe 3 tons, 4 tons here.
that's what I was gonna say. I was thinking I was gonna say 4 tons.
Yeah.
So if we can get 4, well, I think we can do about 30 or 40 bags an hour.
That seems right.
Is about what we've been
Yeah.
doing, and we figured about 40 bags to a ton. I've got mountains and mountains of sandbags here full of ore. And then over on the other side, we got Harry working on
I stripped the screw and
a
this is
cart.
painful.
Uh-oh. So we're trying to develop a little bit of a new cart so we can maybe get some more bags out. We've got these new heavy-duty casters that are going to run on our steel rail. And there we go. We're just going to transfer it right over. Bingo. Awesome. And now that little cart's going to go down the transferway, and then we'll have a cart on every level. Because those cheap little casters on that guy, they don't hold up on the steel rail very well. So we got these new heavy-duty casters, and hopefully we can get a little more life out of those. I want to try and capture some of this free gold for you in the face, but right there's some gold. I believe right there is some gold. Up in here, there's some gold up over here. right up in there. And it's right along those gray streaks, right along there. A lot of nice gold in there, really, really rich stuff. So good. Looks like there might be some more right down in here too, huh? We're back in our stope. Mine operator are my heroes. I'm telling you guys, these guys are workhorses. They have mucked the entire blast, our first stope round, all in bags. We've got 100 bags down off the mountain right now. We've got maybe 400 more stacked there ready to go down. But our season's winding down. We've got one more blast here behind me I want to do. Right here behind me is where we're going to start our eye drift. We're going to go back about 20 to 25 feet. We're going to intersect the fault raise. Then we're going to drift on the fault about 30 feet until we hit the raise. And then we'll be able to send all of our muck down here and cut out about 400 feet worth of screwing around we have to do now. So this is going to be the first round of that eye drift. We're going to do a split shot of the vein, which means we're going to take just the vein, we're going to drill and blast the vein, and then later we'll come back and we'll blast the wall rock separate so we don't contaminate all of our ore. Our first shot, we had our 15 ton or so that we just took right on the vein. We did a little stope around here just to get some money going. But now we really got to focus on this development work behind me here. So our first round didn't go quite as planned. I think I spaced my holes a little bit too far apart. They didn't break all the way to the bottom of them. This quartz is really, really hard. And so I'm going to try and change my strategy a little bit. I'm going to tighten up my holes and see if I can take this face here that's kind of all screwed up and break it nice and flat in the back. So the first thing we got to do is what's called a burn cut. And I was reading about this last night, a little trivia here. Burn cut is short for the viburnum cut, which was developed in the lead zinc mines in Missouri back in the 50s. And the whole idea is you have to drill some holes right in the center of your round that will give you somewhere for your first blast to break to. So you need a hollow spot for that initial blast to open up a hole, and then once you have that hole going, you can shoot to that hole. Because if I just drill a hole in here and I load it with explosives, it doesn't have anywhere to go. It just rifles right back out the hole. So for this cut, what I was taught is I was always taught it should look like a 5 and a dice. So a hole in the middle, and then 1, 2, 3, 4 around it. And you use the 0 hole that you don't load, and then you load the holes all around it. And that works okay. But I'm going to try a little bit different strategy. You only have one hole that's going to relieve you any of that initial blast. So I'm going to do it a little bit different. I'm going to do it like a 6 on a dice. So 2 holes, 2 holes, and 2 holes. And I'm going to load one corner with the first blast, and I'm going to load the bottom one with the second blast. Or I might do 2 number 1s, because you'll have 4 holes that initial blast can shoot to, and then you've got a pretty good sized hole opened up. After your first couple go, then we'll have 4 on the corners. That'll open up the hole. 4 more around here, and then we'll have a nice big burn opened up that we can slab the rest of our round into. We're going to do about a 5 to 6 foot wide shot here. So this is going to be kind of our main workings once we get it developed to the raise, and then we can stope up and bring it all down into this eye drift. And we can stope that way and bring it into the eye drift. So this has got to be wide enough that we can work. We can get a slusher bucket in here in the future. So we're going to do 5 or 6 feet wide. Like I said earlier, we're going to do a split shot. So we're just going to take the vein. We're going to get in there and muck it all out. And then probably at this point next season, we're going to come back and we're going to blast the hanging wall and the foot wall to give us enough space so we can have a 5 foot, roughly 5, 6 foot by about a 7 foot wide drift. We're not any of these old miners that are, we're not working crouched over anymore. We're blasting enough rock so we can work standing up. The round behind me, we're going to do about a 4 to 5 foot round. The holes will be between 4 and 5 foot deep so we can flatten up that face. But I'm going to be using a 6 foot steel so I don't have to get the machine all the way up to the face. I can have it come back about here, so I'm not trying to push it in that little hole there. This is a drill steel. It has a little collar on this side. This shank goes into the drill, and the steel is hollow all the way down. and it runs water from the drill all the way up the steel down into the hole to keep the dust down. Before you put any steel on the drill, you always make sure that it blows, and that way you know the steel's clear and the water can make it down. If you don't do that and you have a little piece of junk in there, it can get shot down the steel with the water and it can clog in there, and then it's a real pain in the butt to get your steel cleaned out. The other thing I was always taught is before you put steel in the drill, you give it a good whack there a couple times, a couple of good whacks there, so you can get it all cleaned out. Give it a quick blow. There we go. Now we know our steel's clear. There's 2 holes, one here and one here, for the water to come out right at the end of the bit, right where it's knocking. And as that drill works, the steel hits the hole, pulls back and turns, hits the hole again, pulls back and turns, and it does that real fast. Boom, 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 boom. And just drills a hole right down through the quartz. And these bits can drill many, many, many holes, tens and tens of holes. Probably not hundreds, but in this quartz stuff, you can get 20, 30, 50 holes out of a bit. And so they last a pretty long time, which is just amazing considering how hard and abrasive quartz is. Here's our machine. This is our drill. I believe it's a Gardner FL83. Great machine for the work that this thing does and the environment that it does it in. It's just a miracle to me that this thing works and lasts so long. This machine has drilled thousands and thousands of holes, but I wanted to give you a real quick little overview of it before we get drilling so you can kind of understand how it works. The way this thing works is there's a piston in here and a hammer essentially that knocks the steel and pushes it into the hole, and as it comes down, I believe as it comes down, it rotates, and so the steel hits and then rotates, hits and rotates. The air runs through it, and it's a big jackhammer essentially. The water runs through it as well, right down the water needle, right down the steel into the bottom of the hole. A couple things on it. This is the leg. This is a pneumatic powered leg, and so it's got 2 stages. This is a tiny, tiny little leg because we're working in a tiny, tiny little stope here. But when I give air to the leg, it extends, and when I release air, it drops it down. That's all done by this thing here. That's how you give air to the leg, and you can really kind of throttle the air on all the way, or off, or about halfway if you want it. If you're just trying to collar a hole and you want to just get the leg up a little bit and start hammering on the face. So that's how the leg works. There's a little button here, which I hardly ever use, but if you press that, it's kind of like a kill switch, and it drops the air out of the leg. It's a bypass, emergency drop the air out of the leg. This is where the air gets connected, and this is the throttle. So all the way down is you're actually blowing air down the steel. One click up is off, and then various clicks to determine how hard it's hitting and spinning. This is the exhaust, so you'll see a bunch of kind of mist and stuff coming out of here. It might get real misty in here when we're drilling. It's not dust, it's mist coming out of the exhaust here. You got your water and your air hookups, and then the drill swivels here, so I can adjust the angle of the drill and where it's sitting on the leg. And then the steel goes in here, right down in there. Chuck tender pulls it down so the steel can't pop out when you're drilling. And it's really loud and really heavy. So that's a little bit of the drill. And now we'll hook up the air and water, and we'll get the drill in our burn cut. We're going to hook up the air hose first. You got to have a whip check on every connection of the hose, including your oiler. I've got an oiler over there, and that feeds a little bit of oil to the drill to keep it lubed up when you're running. But miners are notorious for breaking stuff and being hard on stuff. And I'm sure some of you are going to cringe when you see me do this. But this is how you tighten the air hose on your jack leg. There we go. Tight. Good. Now the water hose. Kink that over so you're not getting sprayed everywhere. There we go, air and water in the drill. Now I'll go turn the valve on and we'll get to drilling. Turn, turn. Yeah. Yeah. So we've got our burn cut in. It looks like a 6 on the dice. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 6 holes. Don't worry about that little guy over there. That was a little screw up, but we got our 6 here. And the important thing to understand about the burn cut is it's the first rock you break in your blast. And so the holes, the dead holes, have to be very, very close to the loaded holes in the corners, so that you don't have a whole lot of rock to break and you can shatter everything into the middle and make a big hole. So it's really important, these 6 holes have to line up in space, 3D space, and the back of the hole has to be in almost the same orientation as the front. You want about 1 inch to 2 inches separation, and so these things need to be exactly parallel with each other in this direction and in this direction. So if you come look down the steel tab, you can see the steels are shooting right in line with each other. And when you look at the side, as you saw previously, they're about 2 inches apart, 1.5 inches apart, right here at the end and in the back of the hole. So it's really important. If you have them all winging out everywhere, it might look really nice and square up front here, but you can have the holes going 1 foot apart at the back end, and then you freeze your burn cut, and then your whole round is in trouble. So it's really important to get the burn cut right. You gotta have all your holes lined up in the right direction, ending, terminating at the back at the same spot as you collared them. And now we'll come up here. I'll do one here on the 4 kind of corners, make a diamond, and those will shoot. And then we'll have a big hole, and then we'll do, the four corners, and that'll pretty much be our vein. And then we'll come back and we'll do 2 foot or 2 or 3, depending on how thick the vein is, 2, 3 hole cuts, and we'll just start slabbing everything right to our burn cut. We got our round all drilled out. It took us about 4 hours. I think there's 22 or 23 holes here. So now the next step, I always like to check them. I've got this big long aluminum spoon. It's just got a little hook in the end. I've checked most of these holes. They're all real good and clean. We always blow them out with the drill before we take the steel out. There's a few down here that have some water in. You might be able to hear it. They're clean holes. They're just a little bit wet. And that's where the stick powder that I'm going to use comes in really, really handy, is because if you use those little tiny prill beads in a wet hole, it leaches them all out and you lose the hole oftentimes. So real quick, we'll talk about the explosives and the caps I'm going to use. This is called water gel or stick powder, and it's just a tube with explosives in it, real simple. And then this is the cap I use to detonate the explosives. The little silver thing in the end is the explosive cap. I shove it in the bottom of this tube, like that. And I'll show you at the end. In this tube is a little bit of explosive powder. And on the first cap, I tie a 0 on there, an electric, and it sends the signal down to the cap. And then the cap blasts the explosives, and the explosives explode and shoot the quartz. On the other end of this, on this blue clip, there's another cap, and I'm going to clip this to the number 2. That's the second one I want to go, and that's how I can time which holes blast when. So we talked a lot about the burn cut earlier when I was drilling it, and now I'm going to load this corner, and these 4 holes I'm going to leave empty. And that's where this first blast and the second blast are going to blast to. You got to have somewhere for the gases to go. So I'm going to load the number 1 hole. You use a non-sparking push stick. A little piece of PVC works great. And then you push it at the bottom of the hole. We're going to try something a little bit different with these. We're going to use stemming, which I didn't last time. There's 2. I better go 4. How far is that going to go there? Yeah. 4. So there's number 1, and I'm going to hook them all up at the end so you can see how that goes. But here real quick, we'll load number 2. Maybe I'll do one more. We'll load our burn real heavy. You want to really make sure that burn opens up good. Uh-oh.
Half stick.
Half stick. Yeah. There we go. We got some room for stemming there. And again, the whole idea is just to make a plug to force the gases to break out from the hole perpendicular to the hole rather than blowing right out the, let's go up here, blowing right back out the hole, the drill hole. So we'll see how it goes. Because we have to hand muck all this stuff, we're putting a little stall wall right in front of the face. And this way, hopefully that will contain a lot of the muck so we don't have to chase it all over the stove. Now we got to hook up our shot. And this is another very important part of the process. So again, we talked about our burn cut. I'm going to shoot the burn. The first 2 corners is number 1 and number 2. So I'm going to take number 1, the blue clip on the number 1, I'm going to hook on to the number 2. That will, when this one goes, it's going to shock this tube, send a signal down the number 2 to the cap. It's going to be delayed by 7,000 milliseconds. It'll send a signal down to the number 2 clip here, which is going to be delayed 300 milliseconds. I'm going to hook this to the number 3. Our round is all hooked up. I have all the blue caps pointing away from the shock tubes so I don't accidentally set off shock tubes in the wrong order. We're all loaded. I just have to hook up this 0 to the number 1 tube, and then we use a battery outside to light this thing off. All right, I'm ready to hook up my battery. We should hear about 6 to 8 soft booms, boom, 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 boom. And then a couple, 3 or 4 seconds later, bigger booms. Boom, 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 boom.
Dang.
Yeah.
That was cool.
Nice. Nice.
Exactly what we wanted.
All right, walking into our active heading here. All of our sandbags survived, looks like. We knocked our wall down some. Today this video is going to be a little bit different. I have a really good friend of mine. We went to school together. He's one of the best geos I know. Worked for big companies, done a lot of exploration work, and we're going to do a little geology lesson today on how gold veins form. This is the mountain face that holds 3 different vein structures, actually 4, that we're going to be talking about today off and on. But to get you oriented, here's our road going up to our blacksmith shop is right over here. We go in about 600 feet through the mountain, hit the raise, go up the raise, connect through the transferway, and then here is the stope that we're working in. These are the vent holes. This is where our escapeway is. This is vein number 1. I'll reference this as vein number 1, and we're working over here. Our stope is in the mountain right about here, and we're working our way to the east. This is east towards this big, huge fault structure right here. We're going to reference this a lot today. This is what we call the north-south trending fault. In the underground workings, there's a raise that runs right up the fault and comes out right underneath that big rock there. So that's the vein we're mining. There's another structure right here. You can see the white. It comes up under vein number 1. We're going to go look at it today. We kind of think it rolls into this structure, comes across the hill. There's a little bit of a vein wisp there, and then up. It changes the orientation of the vein, much more steeply dipping. This whole mountain here, this is cliff former, is a phyllite. It's a metamorphosed sedimentary rock, and the theory was this was old seafloor sediments that had some low-grade gold in them. They got accreted onto the North American plate. There was some volcanism that happened. All this slope-forming stuff over here, this is all an intrusive diorite. So as you had this intrusive diorite come in, hot fluids were circulating through this system, dissolving all the gold out, and then they got later injected back into the host rock here, and you have these gold veins come out that we're mining now today. I keep getting raindrops on my camera. Hey, this is my buddy Dale.
Morning, guys. Up here at Jason's new gold mine, scratching around. We're gonna do a little arm waving on surface. So I like to spend my free time up here in the cold rain and wind, playing with the rocks. Yeah, so Tamarack Geological Services, we started out kind of core logging support for exploration companies around Western North America. Nowadays, we do a lot of geologic modeling, some resource work, geophysical modeling, pretty much all the fancy stuff that people like to see in 3D. Take a deposit like this, put it in 3D space so that way people can understand a little better what they're doing. Any other exploration support, line cutting, soil sampling, mapping. We do underground work as well. So, you know, we got a varied skill set and a fired up crew of geos running around the Northwest. Hit us up if you need a little bit of this on your site, and we'll see where it goes.
So we're going to start today. We're right outside the blacksmith shop portal. And we're going to talk about the host rock for the veins. This is a Jurassic phyllite. So this is kind of what we're dealing with. This is, in some spots, they have a lot of quartz stringers running through them. We would call that sweat quartz. I don't see any right in here.
Much on this side.
Yeah, there's a little bit.
And then you got the foliation plane. which is really kind of, we're wondering how important it is. With the rest of the system, it's kind of parallel to my hammer, and you can see it, you know, it's kind of separates these layers in here in this fresh outcrop. And when we get over to the other side, you'll be able to see the quartz veins, or the sweat quartz, is kind of parallel to that foliation plan.
Right.
And so one of the things we're going to think about today is how that plays with the rest of the system.
We're about 200 or 300 feet from the blacksmith shop portal now, and I wanted to show you, this is the intrusive right here. So it looks a whole lot different from the phyllite. There's light colored grains in there, some dark colored grains. This is a weathered surface, but this was a big body of magma that intruded into the surrounding rock and may be the source for our gold veins. Dude, that is a wicked hammer you got there.
Oh yeah, a geotool. It's doubles as a walking stick, a digger.
It'll cook you breakfast in the morning.
Yep,
Do it all.
It's my new favorite. Yeah, so here we're just looking at more of that oxidized intrusive. One of the things, you know, you'd be looking for if you're trying to find more veins, or how this is related to our veins, is some alteration in this diorite. Alteration's a pretty big subject, but right now I'm not really seeing much in here aside from just some oxidation from the surface. So that's one of the things we're kind of curious about here, is the relationship and the timing between this intrusive and the veins Jason's got going.
So about the only place you can find outcrops around here, because that's what most of it looks like, but the only place you can find outcrops is in the stream beds. So this is a pretty good look at that intrusive again.
There you go.
Yeah, a little less weathered, huh?
Yeah, a little less weathered. Yeah, so one of the things you're looking for in here is, you know, if there's any clays around, it could be an indication that we have a type of hydrothermal alteration around.
So just a real quick note here, all this cliff forming stuff here is phyllite, and then right there is the contact, and it turns into this kind of slope former. You've got all this talus, it's all phyllite, but then looking around, this is all the intrusive that's much more slope forming. There's no cliffs out there at all. So you can tell just from kind of looking around at the landscape where you might have some different rock types just by their slope forming, cliff forming relationships. All right, so this is a piece of a mafic dike that runs right up the fault, and we'll see this outcrop underground. So when we whack this thing open, you're going to see the difference from the intrusive that we saw earlier that's much more felsic, has a lot more quartz, and this is quite a bit more mafic. So we shouldn't see hardly any quartz in this. It'll be real dark, real black. Oh yeah, there we go.
Tool. That's what I'm talking about.
So there's a little weathering rind where it's been laying on the surface and oxidized in. But once you get into the clean break, very, very fine grained. So that tells us that as it was intruded or injected into the system, it cooled very, very fast. The grains didn't have time to grow big. And it's also very mafic. I can walk through that hole, so that gives you some scale. That thing's probably 20 to 30 feet tall. And the reason why there's this big slash through the mountain is you have this fault zone that's a weak area in the rock. And as the water starts trickling down the fault, it's a much easier path to erode for the water. Over a long, long time, the water just eats this huge gash through the mountainside, and it shows where the weak structure of the fault is. And that's how we can follow these north-south trending structures, by the erosional features. The fault raise comes out right up under this big rock. I wanted to pan over and show you there's quartz running right through there. This is the lower vein. You've got some quartz in here all the way up through this area. A fairly well-defined hanging wall coming down here. And then this is all waste right here, starting about right here, all the way up, and then you get this other little stringer of quartz. And it's hard to tell, but I think this is more or less the footwall, and it runs all the way up to there. So maybe a 2 foot wide vein here, maybe a 2.5 or 3 foot wide vein here. And as they work their way up the side of the hill, they actually start to separate some, because one comes here and one starts to go up the hill at a steeper angle. Dale's checking out vein. I'm going to walk under this big rock and I'll show you right here. It's plugged now, but right here is where the fault raise breaks out onto the surface. We're under this big, huge rock right here. All this stuff is being sheltered by this big rock, but if we broke through here, we could actually access the workings down in the Blacksmith Hollageway. So this raise comes right up this fault. And actually, is there a vein right there? Looks like there might be some quartz right there. So the vein, the raise may have followed the vein all the way up. And if you look over here, Dale's working the vein in the exact same elevation. I'm sitting on it. The fault raise comes up through, and then there's some quartz right there on the hanging wall. So the fault does not displace the vein, which is very, very interesting, but may control some of the grade. We'll talk about this a little bit more underground, but there's two different characteristics of quartz here. This is a fairly coarse grained. There's some vuggy stuff, a little bit bigger, a whole lot rustier. This is what I think might be the first generation, which doesn't carry much gold. And this is a much wider, much more fine-grained. And this is what I've been finding a lot of the good gold in underground. And so this is the stuff here that we're going to be trying to identify in these vein systems on the surface. All right, we're waving our arms about our two generations. Dale's got a theory.
Yeah, I mean, I'm just kind of thinking, you know, you have your early generation of quartz vein. It's there, it happened however it happened. And then you have this second generation that Jason's found that really carries the grade. And, you know, I'm thinking of that as kind of its own independent later thing. Like, it happened in a similar time frame probably, but probably under some slightly different stresses. And so it's kind of cruising around through the original quartz vein, probably because there's a rock strength contrast there between the phyllite and the quartz. And then as the original quartz vein changes orientation, you probably have that second generation cross-cutting through it for some period of time. Maybe it's in the middle of the main vein, which I think you've seen, and maybe it pops over under the footwall or back onto the hang wall. It's kind of its own independent thing after the fact, after this original quartz vein was put in place.
Well, we're finishing up here. The lower vein doesn't seem to have any goodies in it. The upper vein up here, right up against the hanging wall, appears to have some really good stuff. So that'll be key when we go underground and we talk about where the gold might be. We're working our way around the hill now, and we're standing at the bottom of this more or less vertical vein that's going up and intersecting our stope. And for those of you who have seen my videos over the past couple of years, this is a spot where I took a round here a couple of years ago. So let's go in and take a look at some of the structure here and how it might interact with the stope above us. But here's the lower section of the blast. I haven't got my excavator up here to muck this out yet, but it's really bellying out here. It's doing a little curve around, maybe coming quite a bit more flat lying. And as soon as it goes up into the vertical position, it pinches, but then above, up in here, there's some spots where it's up 6 feet wide, works its way up the structure here, and our stope is right above those little bushes. This is a real interesting spot. The old timers didn't focus on this vein hardly at all, but I'd really like to understand how this structure and this vein system interacts with the current vein we're working. So this is another section where we have a very super well defined hanging wall, and within the vein structure itself, almost another very, very well defined separation between the quartz, this generation of quartz, and maybe another section of quartz here that came in and intruded into the same structure. And the question again is, what is controlling the grade in these veins? And am I looking in the upper vein, the lower vein? Do both generations have gold? A lot of big questions.
So right now we're on the east side of the fault, right?
We're on the east side of the fault.
Yeah.
We've just come in the blacksmith shop. We've just rounded the corner in our first exposure to the vein. Can you point out kind of where the vein is there? It's a little skinny guy. There you go, about 8 inches, 10 inches. Works its way up and around. It's a little wider over there. And coming down here, the vein continues right there along the wall. They drifted on it all the way out to the surface. But there's no value down here in this vein section. And here in about another 30 feet, we'll show you, just like on the east side of the fault, when we were outside, this is the lower of the two veins. And there's an upper vein just right around the corner where Dale's getting to. And they did quite a bit more work on that vein. So we're looking, can you show us the lower vein? Real hard to tell, I don't know. Yeah. So you've got some vein right there. That's the lower vein. That's what we walked in on and they drifted in on eventually. And then they got here and they realized that there's actually two veins here separated by waist. So from about Dale's head up to about here is all waist. And then that sucker right there, which is about 3.5, 4 feet wide, is all quartz vein, and that is the upper vein. We saw it outside. That's where I saw the goodies when we were putting in this timber wall. I was scaling right up here, found some good looking stuff. Once I got it on the ground, I told Chad and Harry about it, and they put it in a bucket for me. I took it home, slobbed it up, and it's some really, really hot, juicy stuff. Lots of gold in it. So here's a section, and it's hard to tell, is this the upper vein to here and the lower vein here, and they've actually come together in the same structure. If you look over on this wall, then you can see they're separated again. There's one on the lower piece here, waist in the middle, and then vein on the upper piece. So they've come together almost in this section here, right over at the sump. This is a winze, and they winze down on it. They followed the vein down. I don't know if we can get a good view of it. These old workings are, it's real hard to see, but this is mostly vein here. I think the veins have come together. They chased them down. There's some vein stockwork looking stuff here, which is probably the structure of the upper vein. But the old guys chose to follow the lower vein, which is right here. Here's a good spot. Lower vein here, very nice, well-defined footwall, big horse to waist, and then the upper vein there that follows its way down this way into the sump, and that's where they winze down. And they chose to follow the lower vein for some reason. And after this part, we're gonna walk all the way to the fault raise, but there's hardly any development work. The vein assay is pretty much nothing for gold. And I'm wondering if you go down here 50 feet and turn left and drill into the wall 20 feet, if you find a really well-defined secondary vein that has all the gold in it. That's the big mystery on this side of the fault. Here's our fault raise. And
Is
so
this the dike?
There's the dike.
Okay.
That's that Mayfic dike.
Oh yeah.
And I think there's a fresh spot on your left that I scaled some off behind you. Right over here, down low at your hip level.
Yeah.
And so there's that dike.
It's pretty rotten.
Yeah. That's that fine grain stuff.
Dike, yeah.
And so we believe that it runs right up the fault here, and this comes out right underneath that big rock. So we're gonna pull these boards off, see if we can get up in there and take a look. So we've taken off the boards, we're looking up the fault raise here, and we're gonna take a little climb. I'll show you where the veins are exposed in the fault raise. And Dale's coming up I'm about 10 feet. Here's the structure of the fault. Let me get my finger out of the way. Right here. Yeah, real nice defined structure. And they followed it right up the raise. But what I'm interested in is to find the veins. See if I can climb and film at the same time. And so what we have is just up around the corner, boom, we blow up into this nice big wide, well-defined quartz vein. And they followed it right up the fault. Nice.
Oh yeah. It's a nice quartz vein.
Yeah, so riddle me this. So on your right hand, there's a pretty well-defined quartz vein right there with the steel sticking out of it.
Yeah.
And then look behind you, you got all phyllite.
Yes, you do.
And now look, come on up here a little bit farther. And now look over your head. You got a very nice, well-defined quartz vein running right across the fault.
Yes, yeah, sure enough.
So, I haven't been up here in a long time, but here's my new theory. The first generation came in on this structure over here.
This guy.
Yeah. Came across, and at the time it came across, this side of the fault was up high. The fault had 6 feet of movement in it. Drop this down, and the second generation of quartz came in the same structure, cut right across the fault and kept on going.
So this is first gen.
That's first generation that's been dropped down 6 feet. And this is second generation on the left side of the fault,
Yeah.
the east side,
Right.
and this is both generations on the right side. So in the stope, you have one well-defined vein with 2 generations.
This guy.
Yeah,
Yeah.
on the west side. And on the east side, you have 2 separate quartz veins because the fault offset them by 6 feet between the intrusions. So I think the upper vein on the east side of the fault is the second generation, and in the stope they're mixed.
I think that's a pretty good idea, Jason. So if that's true, then we would expect to see some pretty good grades in the hanging wall, or somewhere through this one.
Agreed.
Dead here,
Dead there.
some good mineralization in the second gen upper vein. And does this look like the other quartz that you know, the type of quartz that you typically have identified as being just kind of the dead bull quartz first gen?
Yes, absolutely.
And this stuff up here has the more kind of sugary texture to it.
But yeah, this lower vein here, it looks like the stuff I would not be interested in the stope. The xenoliths in there, pieces of wall rock, you see some real nice brecciation going along, right along the bottom.
Yeah.
And typically that stuff assays nothing. We're up here in the stope. Since we took our round, you can kind of get a real good look at what we're looking at. And I think what we're seeing, I've talked about this on some of the other videos, you've got 2 generations of quartz. The upper section here, we'll take a closer look, is more or less barren. It's mostly bull quartz, white quartz. You've got some of these big xenoliths, phyllite in there. Some of the smaller ones have been altered pretty good. And it kind of grades into the hanging wall here. Little veinlets around. And then you have a second generation, which has made a very nice contact with the first generation, running across. It makes a real nice hanging wall contact right there I want to go look at. But that phyllite is a horse to waste in the middle of the first generation, the second generation. The second generation kind of peters out into the footwall there. But the second generation, especially in the stope, is much more white in color, has some really nice pyrrhotite stringers running through it, and then typically right at the hanging wall contact right there is where we find the really, really juicy stuff. And this is where I've been bringing everybody up, and we've been pulling out grams and grams from a few bags out of this spot right here.
It's nice that you have this sulfide pastry coming through that you can follow. It really defines the second generation, and then as you're moving forward towards that fault raise, if the overall system starts to change orientations, but the second gen stays linear, you'll have something nice to follow, and it'll be interesting to see how that plays with what we saw in the fault raise with the two separate veins
Right.
up by that north turning fault.
Yeah, you got to stick on the second generation.
Mm-hmm. And how's the pyrrhotite? Is the pyrrhotite a good indicator of the gold?
I think the pyrrhotite is a really good indicator of the second generation, but I think the gold sticks right up against the hanging wall.
Right up in here.
Yeah, or right at the contact or somewhere like that. We're looking right under here when the second generation comes up, and that is really, really nice and smooth.
It's very smooth. If you had, so, you know, when you only have one or two chatters, you got to be pretty skeptical about it. But let's say those were good chatters and we were pretty confident in it. The way you can work out which way this fault's moved is by moving your hand over the surface and feeling which direction's rough and which direction's smooth. The direction that's rough, where my hand is on the, what would be the footwall of this fault, couldn't move that way. So it had to have moved this way. In this case, we don't know because there's only a couple and it's not very convincing, but that's one of the ways you can work out the kinematics. Rough this way, this block couldn't have moved that way. Had to have moved this way. So then, you know, you could picture at some point when this fault was doing its thing, all of this lower stuff was moving that direction.
Yep.
And you can work out the direction based on the lineations and the direction of the movement, and then also you know, the chatters help with that as well.
The chatter marks. So
Chatters.
If you've got some good indicators, you can really dial in the direction and the attitude. Is that the right word?
Yeah.
The movement,
attitudes.
the movement direction. The idea in a lot of veins is you get this fluid and placed in this situation where it's right against the wall rock. You have a very, very smooth, well-defined contact, and there is absolutely no alteration, no baking, no nothing. I'm actually looking over here. Is there any sort of, like, it's all screwed up obviously, but is there any sort of drag in the foliation?
Yes. See, I was just thinking we could point that out, because that's another way that you can verify the kinematics, because we said that this wall, what did we say? This wall couldn't go that way. It had to go this way. Which means that this one's going that way.
Right.
And so you can see if this block is moving that way. Does that work with those?
I think the orientation's screwed
I
up.
think they would be opposite.
Opposite. It almost looks like the top one needs to be going that way.
Yeah, it would
Dragging the
dragging it.
foliation. But it's so chaotic here you can't really tell.
Yeah,
but the point being that it's very unusual, I think, to have such a well-defined contact with no alteration or change in the host rock. I mean, it's a laser beam contact, and you can't even tell. I mean, if you were just looking at this section of rock, from here up, you'd never even know there was a vein half an inch down. It's crazy.
Yeah. Yeah, if those those would need to be dragging like this. according to those chatters. Those chatters could be BS too.
Yeah,
There was one.
Yeah,
So, this is probably the dragging of the foliation into the fault's probably a better indicator of the kinematics.
Sure. All right, guys. Well, thanks for watching our video. Hope you enjoyed a couple of geos doing some arm waving underground. Dale, how'd you like it?
Yeah, it's good. It's the third time I've been up here. Every time you learn something new. I think today we, did some heavy arm waving and come up with some good questions. And at the end of the day, he's got the gold in the face, and that's what matters. So
that's right. Now I got to make sense of everything we talked about today to find more gold. So
yeah.
But yeah, if you haven't checked out Dale's website, check it out. Tamarack Geology. I'll leave a link below. Thanks again, everybody, for watching. We'll see you in the next video.